We're back to our more fluffy content today, although this does have a freedom of expression element to it, and I know you're all very interested in that. So, let me begin. This concerns a company called Samherj HF, they're an Icelandic fishing company, and an artist called Odi, or his real full name, Odur Fridriksson. And Mr. Fridriksson, or Odi, if we're being all trendy, he produced a spoof website. He registered the domain name Samherji, which is the company, .co.uk, because actually their website was based in Iceland. He used their logo. He made it all look very much like their website. If you clicked on the links, it took you to all their products and all their brochures. But on there, he put a spoof apology. It said, for immediate release, Samherji apologises, pledges restitution and cooperation with authorities. 11th of May 2023, said, we at Samherji would like to issue a formal apology for our involvement related to the fish rot scandal. We acknowledge the severity of the allegations against us, which include corruption, bribery and neo-colonialism. These actions have undermined Namibia's governance and deprived that country of vital revenues for health and education. And it goes on in that vein. So first of all, what was fish rot? Fish rot was a scandal where it turned out one of these companies, their subsidiary, was engaged pretty much in hooky dealings and corruption in Namibia. Now, it's fair to say that when all this came to light, the company themselves did actually put out a press release with an apology. You know, we've learned our lessons, and imagine our surprise when it found out our subsidiaries were doing this and we knew nothing about it, etc., etc. But he put this website, this spoof website up there with this apology that goes into some depth about how awful the company is and how they've learned, you know, they realise they're just evil and neo-colonialist and capitalist and all that sort of thing. And there were some contact details on there. It said, for further information, contact our Director of Communications, Fredrika at Samherji, or alternatively PR at Samherji. Now, the actual Fredrika, that turned out to be, that was a feminised version of one of the real directors' names. And this actually caught the attention of the press. I mean, mainly the trade press, like the Fishing Times. That's a paper I have a lot of dealings with, actually, because, like I say, I used to be pretty much resident counsel to the fishing fleet down here in Cornwall when we did our fantastic black fishing case. That's the one I think I told you, where we got a conditional discharge and then the proceeds of crime thing for like the $500,000 plus interest, and then we were all celebrating in the pub what a fantastic result what that was, and somebody said, oh, I didn't even know you could do proceeds of crime on the back of a conditional discharge. And then we actually looked up and went, oh, they're right. So we sent a joint email to the judge from the prosecution and the defence going, hi judge, sorry to bother you, look, we don't want to pester you, but this has been brought to our attention. We were honest enough to admit that somebody else had told us. We don't want to clutter, you know, the court up again, so we will accept any nominal penalty. And we just got a thing back going, okay, then £1 fine. Because you can actually do that under something called the slip rule, which is, I mean, the slip rule is there for just correcting sort of technical errors and things like that. But that's by the by. So the press got hold of this, and some people published it as if it was a real apology. You know, oh, you know, this is a real story. But other people got a bit sceptical, and they tried emailing these emails, and they got a response back going, that's all we have to say on the matter. But eventually it came to light, somebody contacted the real company and said, what's going on here with your, you know, because you just put this on your other website. And they went, oh, hang on, right, and this all came to light. So they went for an injunction. And they were basically going for trademark infringement because it used their actual corporate logo, and also malicious falsehood. So I should probably explain what malicious falsehood is, because you probably hear that a lot, but it's a form of defamation. We obviously have libel and slander, you know, the sort of permanent form of words and the transient form of words. But for defamation, the statement has to be defamatory. It has to... There's lots of tests, but we talk about it would have to cause you to shun and avoid the person, or to lower that person's reputation in the minds of right-minded people. I mean, now the test is, you know, sort of, and all the finance, you know, serious harm, etc., etc. But the idea of defamation is the statement is untrue, but it's also very negative. It says something bad about somebody. For malicious falsehood, it's publishing an untrue statement calculated to cause harm. But the thing is, the statement doesn't have to be defamatory. So to give an example, if you contact me and say, hey Al, have you got Dan Black Belt Barrister's phone number? Because I want to instruct him on a matter. And I say, Dan can't do that anymore. He's too busy with all his charity work. But I can do it. Well then, that's an untrue statement. Dan's going to lose out money on that because you're possibly not going to instruct him. It doesn't actually even if it wasn't me trying to get that money myself, by the way, even if I just said, no, Dan's not available, he's doing charity work. Well, it's not defamatory to say somebody's doing charity work, quite the opposite. But the statement would cause them, would cause Dan a loss. So that's what malicious falsehood is. I mean, it's things like saying that people are insolvent. Because, there's nothing defamatory about saying somebody's insolvent. I mean, that can happen to the best of people. It's not their fault. But at the same time, that would, perhaps stop people, sending work somebody's way. So that's what malicious falsehood here is. Now, it's very interesting here because I suppose, what is the falsehood? Well, you're saying that they made an apology. So clearly that's not defamatory to say somebody's owning up to something and they are, trying to put things right. Well, clearly that's not defamatory. But we got on to some interesting thing about the loss aspect, which I'll come on to. But what was OD's defence? Well, he said he had an Article 10 defence. He's got his rights to freedom of expression under Article 10. However, the court said, well, yes, but this is a qualified right. And Article 10, there's a little subsection 2 that says you can restrict this right insofar as is necessary and reasonable and proportional in a democratic society to protect the reputation and rights of others. So that's why defamation is allowed. Because you've got your Article 10 rights, but you can bring defamation cases under 10.2 because there's a conflict of rights here. And obviously, your Article 10 rights might interfere with somebody else's rights to, enjoy their reputation, or their other rights, their rights to trade. So there's a big argument about this, and he said, "Well, look, this is art. This is what we call culture bombing. Hopefully, that won't get me demonetised. Culture jamming. That's even better. Where you use the trademarks of other people, or you use their material to make a point." And he pointed to a successful case, which was somebody was complaining about, wanted to highlight the situation in Darfur and the difference between, quotes, the first world and the third world and all this sort of thing. And they featured lots of, expensive goods in their art project, including Louis Vuitton handbags. And Louis Vuitton sued and said, you are infringing on our trademark by using our handbags in your art project. And in that one, the court came back and said, well, no, because they're not trying to cash in on Louis Vuitton's reputation. It's not like they're down the market selling knockoff Louis Vuitton bags or anything like that. They are using your logo to highlight a point about people spending a small fortune on all these consumer items. Well, there are people out in the world starving to death. So in that particular case, they allowed it. And the court here said, actually, this is getting pretty close to that territory. However, it's possibly gone just a little bit too far, because clearly in that case, there wasn't the suggestion that this was officially Louis Vuitton, or Louis Vuitton was sponsoring this project, or Louis Vuitton were making the point about Darfur. But they said here, by making this very realistic spoof website. And what I love about when it comes to what we call passing off, the test for passing off, let me introduce you to the man on the Clapham omnibus's cousin, the moron in a hurry. Because that's the test for passing off. Would a moron in a hurry think it was actually the real thing? And what they said here is, actually, yeah, people would think this was the real company. So that's clearly a trademark infringement. But what about the malicious falsehood? They said, well, that's what's your loss here, though, realistically? So they said, look, you've come along, you want this website down. The guy's made his point now. He's got all his publicity. You just want him to stop. So we'll put an injunction in place going, okay, take that down now. You've had your bit of fun. But when it came to the damages element and indeed looking at the malicious falsehood element, they said, look, we've dealt with this as a preliminary issue. You've got your injunction. Go away and basically accept some nominal damages. Because if you come back to court on this and waste our time, where the judge dropped a massive hint that if you come back and take this any further, you're probably looking at getting like £1 damages, and then you'll be paying all his costs. So I just thought you might find that interesting, though, because that's that conflict between freedom of expression and other people's rights. But yeah, doing things, art has always been a protected category, as it were, when it comes to things like copyright. Because, he also argued what we call fair dealings. You often see people call it fair use, but fair use is the American term. And the use, we have fair dealings here. And our approach is quite different. In America, it's more of a generic thing. Is this a fair use? Would somebody say, actually, that was quite a reasonable way of using somebody else's IP protected material? Here you have to fit into certain categories, like, are you doing it for education? Are you doing it for news? Is it transformative art? So you have to fit into one of those boxes. It's a little less flexible than the American approach. But the general thing with fair dealing is you have to either be making a legit comment about something. So say, for instance, he'd have used their logo in an article about the fish rot scandal. That would probably have been okay because he's just identifying the company at the heart of it. So that would have been okay, the same way that any news story about a company can use the company's trademarks. It can put their logo up when you're talking about the company. Or if you're selling aftermarket car parks, you can put the logos of the various cars there. So long as you make it clear that you're not an official dealer and these aren't official, Ford parts or Vauxhall parts or Rover parts or whatever. I mean, like I say, I'll have to do a specific video about fair use. But I did also say in my last video that I would talk about where somebody used its art as a defence to terrorism. And that was a guy called Michael Stone. He was a loyalist paramilitary. And he basically was alleged to have attacked Stormont with a plan to assassinate Gerry Adams because he turned up with some explosives and a gun. And he was tackled and caught. But his defence was, no, it was all performance art. I was trying to make a point about the current situation in Ireland and Northern Ireland. No harm, no foul. It was just basically a stunt. But the court said, yeah, we might have been more inclined to believe that if you didn't have previous convictions for three previous convictions for murder for actually throwing hand grenades at people. So nice try, matey boy, but back to prison you go. But the crossover between what is art, what is protest, what is crime. I mean, I could talk forever about this because I adopt the very wide definition of art. To me, art is just anything manufactured. Some people say anything manufactured by humans, but I think I'm also into animal art. But I think it's anything anything not natural that provokes a response. I mean, there is the old argument that the purpose of art is to discomfort the comfortable and comfort the discomforted. That's one of the purposes of art. And I suppose that would have been the argument here, because the company clearly were quite discomforted, hence spending all the money getting their injunction. But there you go. So a nice little freedom of expression one that hopefully isn't too controversial. So as always, hope you found that vaguely interesting, vaguely informative and vaguely accurate. The boys are back. Now, as Lord Loverduck got key billing last time, he says hello, and you will notice actually I did dust him. I didn't realise, it was so embarrassing how dusty he'd got just being sat on the shelf watching me. But what I'll do for this one is I need a thumbnail, so I'll try and get Cappy Barrister in this one. And for YouTube, I need to be on this side to get my thumbnail. So there we go. So there's me, and there's Cappy. Say hello, Cappy. Look keen, and we'll try and think of a suitable title for this.